The bitter December wind whipped across the Wyoming plains, carrying with it blinding snow and the desperate prayers of Olivia Abbott, a woman who had never felt more alone in her 24 years of life. Her hands trembled not from the cold, but from the sharp contraction that ripped through her swollen belly, where her unborn twins fought to enter a world that seemed determined to reject them before they'd even drawn their first breaths. The blizzard had swallowed the road to Keeler, and with it, Olivia's last hope of reaching the midwife in time. Wyoming Territory, 1878. Olivia had come west with dreams and a husband. Now she had only the dreams, and they were fading fast in the face of this merciless storm. "Just a little further," she whispered to herself, her voice immediately swept away by the howling wind. Her horse had spooked and bolted an hour back, leaving her to trudge through snow that reached past her knees. The wagon wheel had broken 5 miles out of town, and with Thomas gone, there'd been no one to help fix it. Thomas. The name brought a fresh wave of grief, sharper than the contractions that were now coming with alarming frequency. 6 months dead from typhoid, and here she was, carrying his legacy alone in the wilderness. The small cabin she'd left that morning seemed impossibly distant now. Another contraction seized her, stronger than the last. Olivia stumbled, falling to her knees in the snow. The rough woolen blanket she'd wrapped around herself was sodden and heavy, offering little protection against the relentless cold. Her fingers, red and swollen, fumbled with the edges of the fabric, trying to pull it tighter. "Please," she whispered to the empty whiteness surrounding her. "Please, not here. Not like this." The wind seemed to mock her pleas, throwing snow and ice at her face until she could barely see. She pushed herself up again, one hand supporting her belly, the other reaching out blindly for something, anything, to hold on to. The darkness was creeping in at the edges of her vision when she heard it, the steady rhythm of hoofbeats cutting through the storm's howl. Hallucination, she told herself, her mind playing cruel tricks as the cold worked its way into her bones. But the sound grew louder, more distinct, and then a dark shape materialized from the swirling white. A horse, and atop it, a rider. Olivia tried to call out, but her voice emerged as little more than a rasp. She waved her arm frantically, praying the figure would see her. The horse slowed, and the rider dismounted in one fluid motion. Tall and broad-shouldered, his face was obscured by a scarf wrapped around the lower half of his face, but his eyes, sharp and alert, found hers immediately. "Madam." His voice was deep, carrying easily over the wind's moan. He moved towards her with the cautious grace of someone approaching a wounded animal. "Good Lord, what are you doing out in this storm?" Olivia's reply was cut short by another contraction, this one so fierce she doubled over with a cry. Understanding dawned in the stranger's eyes. In 3 long strides, he was at her side, strong arms coming around her to keep her from falling. "Easy now," he murmured, his breath warm against her frozen cheek. "You're safe now." Those 3 simple words, "you're safe now," broke something inside her. Tears sprang to her eyes, instantly freezing on her lashes. "The babies," she gasped. "My twins. They're coming." If the man was surprised by this revelation, he hid it well. Without hesitation, he swept her into his arms as if she weighed nothing despite her advanced pregnancy. "My cabin's not far," he said, his voice steady and reassuring. "We'll get you there. Hold on tight." Olivia clutched at the rough wool of his coat as he settled her onto his horse before mounting behind her. His arms formed a secure cage around her as he took the reins, and she felt the solid warmth of his chest against her back. "I'm Adam," he said, his mouth close to her ear to be heard over the storm. "Adam Fletcher. And you're going to be all right, madam, you and your little ones." As the horse moved forward, picking its way carefully through the drifts, Olivia leaned back against this stranger, this Adam, and allowed herself, for the first time in months, to believe that might be true. The journey to Adam's cabin seemed endless, each step of the horse jostling Olivia's body and sending waves of pain through her. She bit her lip until she tasted blood, determined not to scream. Adam's arms remained steady around her, his voice a constant murmur of reassurance in her ear. "Just over this ridge," he promised as another contraction hit her. "See those lights? That's home." Through the curtain of snow, Olivia could just make out the warm glow of windows, a beacon in the white wilderness. The sight gave her strength, and she straightened slightly in the saddle. "My name is Olivia," she managed between breaths. "Olivia Abbott." "Mrs. Abbott," Adam acknowledged, a hint of smile in his voice. "You're the widow from the valley. I've heard about you." Keeler was small enough that everyone knew everyone's business, but Olivia was surprised this man knew of her. She'd kept to herself since Thomas's death, venturing into town only when absolutely necessary. "And you're the cowboy who keeps to himself up in these hills," she replied, remembering the gossip she'd heard at the general store. "The one who works for the Sawyer Ranch but lives apart." Adam's chuckle vibrated against her back. "Sounds like my reputation precedes me." Another contraction hit before she could respond, this one so intense that a cry escaped her despite her best efforts. Adam urged the horse forward, and minutes later, they were sliding to a stop before a sturdy log cabin. He dismounted quickly and lifted her down, cradling her against his chest as he pushed open the door with his shoulder. Heat from a well-maintained fire enveloped them, and Olivia nearly sobbed with relief. The cabin was simple but clean, a single room with a bed in one corner, a table and chairs, and a stone fireplace that took up most of one wall. Adam laid her gently on the bed and began removing her snow-soaked outer garments with efficient, impersonal movements. "I need to tend to my horse," he said, draping a thick quilt over her. "Will you be all right for a moment?" Olivia nodded, though panic fluttered in her chest at the thought of being alone. Adam seemed to sense her fear, for he squeezed her hand briefly before heading back into the storm. Left alone, Olivia took stock of her situation. The contractions were coming faster now, barely giving her time to catch her breath between them. The babies would not wait much longer. She'd helped at enough births back in Boston to know that much. Adam returned, bringing a blast of cold air with him that was quickly shut out as he closed the door. He'd removed his coat and hat, revealing dark hair streaked with silver at the temples, and a face that, while not conventionally handsome, was striking all angles and planes, with a strong jaw and those alert, intelligent eyes. "How far apart are they?" he asked, moving to the fire to hang a kettle of water. "Nearly constant," Olivia gasped as another pain seized her. "It won't be long." Adam nodded, his expression grave but calm. "I've delivered foals and calves, but never a human baby," he admitted. "You'll need to tell me what to do." Under any other circumstances, Olivia might have laughed at the comparison, but now she was simply grateful for his steady presence. "I've assisted at births," she said. "Between the two of us, we might manage." Adam rolled up his sleeves, revealing forearms corded with muscle. "Then we'll manage together, Mrs. Abbott." "Olivia," she corrected, then arched her back as another contraction tore through her. "Olivia," Adam repeated, and something in the way he said her name made her feel as though she'd known him far longer than this desperate hour. The next 2 hours were a blur of pain and effort. Adam proved to be a quick study, following Olivia's gasped instructions with calm efficiency. When her strength failed, his quiet encouragement pushed her forward. And when the first cry of her son pierced the howling of the storm, they shared a moment of stunned wonder before Adam handed her the tiny, red-faced infant. "A boy," he said, his voice rough with emotion. Olivia had only a moment to marvel at the perfect miniature features before another contraction reminded her that her ordeal was only half finished. Adam took the baby back, wrapping him carefully in a clean shirt before returning to help deliver the second child. The second birth was quicker, but no less intense. When Adam placed a squalling baby girl beside her brother in Olivia's arms, the look of awe on his weathered face mirrored the feelings overwhelming her own heart. "They're perfect," Adam murmured, sitting on the edge of the bed and staring at the twins as though they were some kind of miracle. Perhaps they were. Olivia looked up at this man, this stranger who had saved not just her life but the lives of her children, and felt a rush of gratitude so profound it brought fresh tears to her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, the words wholly inadequate for what he had done. Adam shook his head, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. No need for thanks. Anyone would have done the same. But they both knew that wasn't true. In this harsh territory, survival often depended on looking after oneself first. Many would have ridden past a woman alone in a blizzard, unwilling to risk their own safety. "Rest now," Adam said, rising from the bed. "I'll keep watch over all of you." As exhaustion claimed her, Olivia's last conscious thought was that for the first time since Thomas died, she felt truly safe. Dawn broke clear and cold, the storm having blown itself out sometime in the night. Olivia woke to the soft sounds of her baby's breathing and the smell of coffee. Adam stood at the small stove, his back to her, quietly preparing breakfast. For a moment, she simply watched him, taking in the broad set of his shoulders and the careful way he moved, as though conscious of making too much noise. There was something comforting about his presence, solid and reassuring in a world that had felt so uncertain for so long. As if sensing her gaze, he turned, a smile warming his features when he saw she was awake. "Good morning," he said, crossing to the bed with a cup of coffee. "How are you feeling?" Olivia took the cup gratefully, inhaling the rich aroma before taking a sip. "Sore," she admitted. "But alive, thanks to you." Adam ducked his head slightly, clearly uncomfortable with her gratitude. "The snow's stopped," he said, changing the subject. "But the drifts are high. You'll need to stay here for a few days until it's safe to travel." The thought of imposing on him further made Olivia uneasy, but a glance at her newborns, sleeping peacefully beside her, stilled any protest. They were too vulnerable for a journey through snow-clogged trails. "I don't want to be a burden," she said instead. Adam's expression softened as he looked at the twins. "You're not a burden, Olivia. None of you are." He hesitated, then added, "Truth is, it's nice to have company. Gets mighty quiet up here sometimes." Something in his tone made Olivia wonder about the story behind this solitary cowboy, but before she could ask, one of the babies, her son, began to fuss. Adam watched with interest as she nursed him, his gaze respectful rather than intrusive. "What will you name them?" he asked after a while. Olivia looked down at her son with his shock of dark hair so like his father's. "This one is James Thomas, after my husband." She shifted her gaze to her daughter, still sleeping peacefully. "And she's Elizabeth Grace." "Strong names," Adam approved. "They'll need them out here." The simple truth of his words settled over Olivia like a weight. She had come west with Thomas full of dreams about their future, but the reality of life in the Wyoming territory was harsher than either of them had anticipated. And now, as a widow with 2 newborns, her prospects were even more daunting. Adam seemed to read her thoughts. "The folks in Keeler are good people," he said. "They'll help you." "Perhaps," Olivia allowed. She'd found the townspeople polite but reserved, still viewing her as an outsider even after 2 years. Her status as a widow had only increased the distance, as though misfortune might be contagious. But I can't rely on charity forever. What will you do?" Adam asked, his directness refreshing after months of people avoiding the subject of her future. Olivia sighed, shifting James to her shoulder to burp him. "My husband left a small plot of land in the cabin. It's not much, but it's ours. I was planning to plant a garden in the spring, maybe raise some chickens to sell eggs." Adam nodded thoughtfully. "It's a start, but you'll need help with the heavy work, especially with two little ones to tend." Before Olivia could respond, Elizabeth began to cry, her tiny face scrunching up in displeasure. To her surprise, Adam reached for the baby with confident hands. "May I?" he asked. At Olivia's nod, he lifted Elizabeth carefully, cradling her against his chest with a gentleness that seemed at odds with his rugged exterior. The baby quieted almost immediately, staring up at Adam with unfocused eyes. "Well, look at that," he murmured, a smile spreading across his face. "She likes me." Something about the sight of this strong man holding her tiny daughter with such tenderness made Olivia's heart turn over in her chest. "You're good with her," she observed. Adam's smile faded slightly, a shadow crossing his features. "I had a sister," he said quietly. "Much younger, I helped raise her after our mother died." The past tense told Olivia all she needed to know. "I'm sorry," she said softly. Adam shrugged, but the motion was careful so as not to disturb Elizabeth. "It was a long time ago, typhoid like your husband." They shared a look of understanding, this common grief forming an unexpected bond between them. Then Adam handed Elizabeth back to her mother, his fingers brushing Olivia's in the exchange. The brief contact sent a jolt of awareness through her that she immediately tried to suppress. It was inappropriate to feel such things, especially so soon after giving birth, especially for a man she barely knew. "I should check on the horses," Adam said, and if he'd felt the same spark, his face gave no indication of it. "Rest while you can. The little ones won't let you sleep much once they get their bearings." After he'd gone, Olivia leaned back against the pillows, babies nestled in the crooks of her arms, and tried to make sense of the tumultuous 24 hours that had changed her life so dramatically. She'd gone from the brink of death to the wonder of new life, from utter solitude to the protective circle of a stranger's arms. Adam Fletcher was an enigma, a lone cowboy who seemed more comfortable with animals than people yet had shown her nothing but kindness and respect. She wondered what had driven him to this solitary existence, what ghosts haunted the corners of his eyes when he thought she wasn't looking, but those were questions for another time. For now, she would focus on regaining her strength and keeping her babies healthy. The future, with all its uncertainties, would have to wait. The next few days fell into a gentle rhythm. Adam tended to his chores and cared for the horses, made meals and kept the fire well stoked. Olivia focused on recovering and nursing the twins, who proved to have healthy appetites. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire while Adam carved tiny wooden animals for the babies, or read aloud from one of the few books he owned. On the third day, Olivia felt strong enough to get up and move around the cabin. Adam had been sleeping on a bedroll near the fire, insisting she and the twins keep the bed, but she was determined not to be a complete invalid. "You don't have to do that," Adam protested when he came in from chopping wood to find her at the stove, stirring a pot of stew. "I want to," Olivia replied firmly. "You've done more than enough already." Adam set down his armload of firewood and studied her for a moment. "Stubborn, aren't you?" "I prefer determined," she retorted, and was rewarded with a rare, full smile that transformed his face, softening the hard lines and lighting his eyes. "Determined it is," he conceded, moving to check on the twins, who were sleeping in a makeshift cradle he'd fashioned from a wooden crate lined with blankets. His gentleness with them continued to surprise and move Olivia. Most men she knew would have kept their distance from newborns, viewing them as strictly women's domain. "My husband was afraid to hold babies," she said without thinking. "He said they were too fragile for his big hands." Adam glanced up at her. "My father was the same way. Wouldn't touch me or my brothers until we could walk, but he made an exception for my sister." His expression grew distant. She had him wrapped around her little finger from the moment she was born. "And you?" Olivia asked softly. Adam's smile was tinged with sadness. "Me too." Sarah was impossible not to love. The revelation of his sister's name seemed significant somehow, as though he was entrusting her with a piece of himself. Olivia accepted it for the gift it was and didn't press for more. They ate dinner together at the small table, the twins sleeping peacefully nearby. The domesticity of the scene was not lost on Olivia. How easily they had fallen into these roles, how natural it felt to share this space with him. "The trail to town should be passable tomorrow," Adam said as they finished their meal. "I can take you home or to Keeler if you prefer." Reality, which had seemed so distant in the cocoon of the cabin, came rushing back. Of course she would have to leave. This arrangement was only ever temporary, a necessity born of emergency. "Home, I think," she decided after a moment's consideration. "I need to see what state the cabin is in after the storm." Adam nodded, his face unreadable. "I'll hitch up the sleigh in the morning. It'll be more comfortable for you and the little ones than horseback." "Thank you," Olivia said, the words still feeling woefully inadequate for all he had done. "I don't know how I'll ever repay you." Adam waved away her thanks. "There's no debt between neighbors, Olivia. Are we neighbors?" she asked, realizing she had no idea exactly where his cabin was in relation to hers. "Close enough," he replied with a slight smile. "My land borders the north edge of your property, that ridge you can see from your porch. My cabin's just on the other side." The knowledge that he had been so close all this time was both surprising and oddly comforting. "I've been there 2 years and never knew. Like I said, I keep to myself." Adam rose and began clearing the dishes. "You should rest. Tomorrow will be a long day." Olivia wanted to object, to keep this quiet conversation going, but exhaustion was already pulling at her. The twins would be awake soon for their next feeding, and she needed all the rest she could get. As she settled into bed, she watched Adam moving about the cabin, banking the fire for the night and checking that everything was secure. There was a gracefulness to his movements despite his size, an economy of motion that spoke of a man comfortable in his own skin. In the dim light of the dying fire, with the wind sighing around the eaves of the cabin, Olivia allowed herself to acknowledge the truth she'd been avoiding. She was attracted to Adam Fletcher. It wasn't just gratitude or the intensity of shared experience. There was something more, something that made her pulse quicken when their eyes met, or when his hand accidentally brushed hers. The realization brought with it a wave of guilt. Thomas had been dead only 6 months. Was she so fickle that her heart could turn so quickly to another? But even as she questioned herself, she knew the answer wasn't so simple. She had loved Thomas deeply, but he was gone, and she was still here, still alive with all the needs and desires of a living woman. Sleep claimed her before she could untangle these complicated emotions, but her dreams were filled with the image of strong hands holding tiny babies and eyes the color of a Wyoming sky. Morning brought clear skies and a fresh blanket of snow that sparkled in the early sunlight. Adam was already up and about when Olivia woke, feeding the horses and preparing the sleigh for their journey. She nursed the twins and packed the few things he had loaned her, trying to ignore the heaviness in her heart at the thought of leaving. After a simple breakfast, Adam helped her bundle the babies in layers of blankets. He'd fashioned a sort of sling that would allow her to carry both of them against her chest, leaving their faces visible but protected from the cold. "It's not far to your cabin," he assured her as he lifted her into the sleigh. "Less than an hour if the drifts aren't too bad." The twins, fed and changed, were remarkably content as Adam tucked heavy fur robes around Olivia and the babies. His hands lingered for just a moment longer than necessary, and when he looked up, their eyes met and held. "All set?" he asked, his voice a touch huskier than usual. Olivia nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Adam climbed up beside her and took the reins, clicking to the horses. The sleigh lurched forward, runners hissing over the fresh snow. They traveled in companionable silence for a while, the beauty of the winter landscape making conversation seem superfluous. The world was transformed into a wonderland of white, pristine and peaceful, with only the occasional track of deer or rabbit marring the perfect blanket of snow. "I've always loved this time of year," Adam said eventually. "Everything's so quiet and clean, like the world's been wiped fresh and is just waiting for a new story to be written on it." The unexpected poetry of his words surprised Olivia. "I never thought of it that way," she admitted. Winter in Boston was mostly something to endure slushy streets and freezing tenements. Adam glanced at her curiously. "You lived in a tenement. I thought—" He stopped, looking slightly embarrassed. "You thought I was from money because of my accent," Olivia finished for him, smiling slightly. "No, my father was a schoolteacher and my mother a seamstress. We lived modestly but well enough until they both died of influenza when I was 16. "I'm sorry," Adam said quietly. Olivia shrugged, the motion barely perceptible under the furs. "I went to work as a governess for a wealthy family. That's where I learned to speak properly, as my employer put it. That's also where I met Thomas. He was the family's physician." The mention of her husband's name hung in the air between them. Adam's hands tightened slightly on the reins. "He was a good man," Olivia continued, feeling the need to acknowledge Thomas's memory. "Kind and dedicated to his patients. When he decided to come west to set up a practice where doctors were scarce, I thought it was the most noble thing I'd ever heard." "Sounds like he was brave," Adam observed, his tone carefully neutral. "He was," Olivia agreed. "But also a bit naive. We both were. We thought frontier medicine would be challenging but rewarding. We never expected." Her voice trailed off as she remembered the typhoid epidemic that had swept through Keeler last summer, claiming not just Thomas but a dozen others. "The reality of the West has a way of shattering expectations," Adam said softly. "For better or worse." "And for you?" Olivia asked, curious about what had brought this solitary man to Wyoming. Was it better or worse? Adam was quiet for so long that she thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and reflective. "Both, I suppose. I came out here after the war between the states. Saw too much death, too much hatred. Needed open spaces and solitude to put myself back together." The revelation that he was a veteran explained something of the shadows she sometimes glimpsed in his eyes. "Did it work?" she asked gently. "The solitude?" Adam's mouth quirked in a half-smile. "Mostly. The land has a way of healing what's broken if you give it time." They rounded a bend in the trail, and suddenly Olivia's small cabin came into view, smoke rising from the chimney. She gasped in surprise. "Someone's there," she said, anxiety spiking through her. Adam's posture changed immediately, alert and protective. "Stay here," he instructed, stopping the sleigh and reaching for the rifle stowed beneath the seat. Before he could dismount, the cabin door opened, and a familiar figure emerged: Harriet Thornton, the midwife from Keeler. "Olivia Abbott." the older woman called, hurrying down the path with surprising agility for someone of her years. "Thank the Lord you're alive. We've been worried sick." Relief washed over Olivia as Adam relaxed beside her, setting the rifle aside. "Mrs. Thornton," she greeted the midwife. "How did you know to come here?" "When you didn't arrive for your appointment, I sent my son to check on you," Harriet explained, reaching the sleigh and peering anxiously at the bundle in Olivia's arms. "He found your cabin empty and your wagon abandoned on the road. The whole town's been searching for you." Her sharp eyes took in the sight of the twins. "But I see you managed without me after all." "Not entirely," Olivia said, glancing at Adam. "Mr. Fletcher found me in the blizzard and brought me to his cabin. He delivered the babies." Harriet's eyebrows shot up as she assessed Adam with new interest. "Did he now?" "Well, Mr. Fletcher, it seems you have hidden talents." Adam shifted uncomfortably under her scrutiny. "Mrs. Abbott did most of the work," he said. "I just followed instructions." "Modest too," Harriet observed with a knowing smile. "Well, don't just sit there in the cold. Bring her inside. I've got the fire going and soup on the stove." Adam helped Olivia down from the sleigh, his hands strong and steady at her waist. The contact, brief though it was, sent that same jolt of awareness through her, and from the slight darkening of his eyes, she knew he felt it too. Harriet, missing nothing, glanced between them with undisguised interest before turning to lead the way into the cabin. The interior was warm and welcoming, the fire crackling merrily in the hearth. Olivia felt a rush of gratitude for the midwife's thoughtfulness. "Let me see these little ones properly," Harriet said, helping Olivia remove the sling. She examined the twins with expert hands, clucking approvingly. "Strong and healthy, despite their dramatic entrance into the world. You did well, both of you." Adam, standing awkwardly by the door as though unsure of his place now that Olivia was safely home, nodded at the compliment but didn't move further into the room. "I should get back," he said, his eyes meeting Olivia's briefly. "Make sure the animals are tended to." "Of course," Olivia replied, trying to mask her disappointment. "Thank you again, Mr. Fletcher, for everything." A moment of silent communication passed between them, conveying more than words could express. Then, Adam touched the brim of his hat in farewell and was gone, the door closing softly behind him. Harriet waited until the sound of the sleigh had faded before fixing Olivia with a shrewd look. "So that's the mysterious Adam Fletcher," she mused. "Handsome fellow in a rugged sort of way." "He saved our lives," Olivia said simply, not wanting to examine her feelings for Adam under Harriet's perceptive gaze. The older woman's expression softened. "And delivered your babies safely into the world. That creates a bond, whether you're looking for one or not." She patted Olivia's hand. "But that's a conversation for another day. Right now, you need rest and these little ones need names." "James and Elizabeth," Olivia supplied, grateful for the change of subject. "Fine names," Harriet approved. "Now I'll stay with you for a few days to make sure you're all settling in properly. Doctor's orders." Olivia knew better than to argue with the midwife, who was also the closest thing Keeler had to a physician since Thomas's death. Besides, she was glad for the company and the help, even as her thoughts kept drifting to the solitary cabin beyond the ridge and the man who lived there. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of feedings, diaper changes, and 2 brief moments of sleep. Harriet stayed for 3 days before other duties called her back to town, but not before extracting a promise from Olivia to send word if she needed anything at all. "The community will help you," she assured Olivia. "That's how we survive out here, by looking out for each other." And true to her word, help did come. The women of Keeler organized a rotation, taking turns to bring food, do laundry, or simply sit with the twins while Olivia napped. It was a kindness she hadn't expected, having felt so isolated before. But despite the regular visits, Olivia found herself watching the ridge, hoping for a glimpse of Adam. He hadn't returned since bringing her home, and though she told herself he was simply respecting her privacy and the propriety of the situation, she couldn't help feeling disappointed. Then, on a clear, cold morning in early January, as Olivia was hanging freshly washed diapers to dry by the fire, a knock sounded at her door. Her heart leapt with an anticipation she immediately tried to quell. It was probably Mrs. Peterson from town with the bread she'd promised. But when she opened the door, it was Adam who stood there, hat in hand, looking somewhat uncertain but no less handsome for it. "Mr. Fletcher," she breathed, unable to keep the pleasure from her voice. "Mrs. Abbott," he replied formally, then seemed to relax slightly. "Olivia. I hope I'm not intruding." "Not at all," she assured him, stepping back to allow him entry. "Please come in." Adam ducked through the doorway, his tall frame making the small cabin seem even smaller. His eyes immediately sought out the twins who were sleeping in the cradle Thomas had built months before. "They've grown," he observed softly, moving to stand beside the cradle. "Like weeds," Olivia agreed with a smile. "Especially James. He's already outgrowing his blankets." Adam's mouth curved in an answering smile as he gazed down at the sleeping infants. "They're beautiful, Olivia. You must be very proud." "I am," she said, watching him rather than the babies. Something in her chest tightened at the tenderness in his expression, the gentle way he adjusted the blanket that had slipped from Elizabeth's tiny shoulder. After a moment, Adam straightened and turned to face her, his expression becoming more serious. "I've come with a proposition," he said. "A business proposition," he added hastily when her eyebrows rose. "Oh." Olivia gestured for him to sit at the small table while she poured coffee for them both. Adam accepted the cup with a nod of thanks but remained standing, as though too restless to sit. "I've been thinking about what you said about planting a garden and raising chickens. It's a good start, but it won't be enough to support you and the little ones, not out here." Olivia stiffened slightly. It was a reality she'd been trying not to face, but she couldn't deny the truth of his words. "What do you suggest?" "A partnership," Adam said, meeting her gaze directly. "Your land adjoins mine. Together, we'd have enough for a small but viable ranch. I have some savings, enough to buy a modest herd to start. You have this cabin, the outbuildings, and access to the creek." Olivia stared at him, trying to process his proposal. "You want to go into business with me?" Adam nodded, his expression earnest. "It makes sense, Olivia. I have the knowledge and the strength for the heavy work." "You have the land," and he hesitated, then continued more softly. "And I've seen how you keep this place, how organized and efficient you are. A ranch needs that kind of management too." It was a practical solution to her financial concerns, but Olivia couldn't help wondering if there was more to it. And what would this partnership entail exactly? Would you move your cabin here, or? "I'd keep my place for now," Adam replied, a faint color rising in his cheeks. "I'd come over daily to work the land, help with repairs, that sort of thing. As the operation grows, we could reassess." It was a sensible arrangement, one that would preserve her independence while providing the security she desperately needed for her children. Yet something in her was disappointed by its very pragmatism. "And the profits?" she asked, needing to understand all aspects of what he was proposing. "Split equally," Adam said without hesitation. "We'd both contribute, we'd both benefit." Olivia took a sip of her coffee, using the moment to gather her thoughts. The proposition was more than fair generous, even. But the implications of tying her future so closely to this man she barely knew, yet felt so drawn to, gave her pause. "I need time to think about it," she said finally. Adam nodded, unsurprised. Of course, it's a big decision. He set down his coffee cup and moved toward the door. Take all the time you need. I'll be around if you have questions, or he glanced at the woodpile, which was running low, if you need anything at all. After he'd gone, Olivia sat for a long time at the table, her coffee growing cold as she weighed her options. The practical benefits of Adam's proposal were undeniable. Alone, she faced an uphill struggle to provide for her children. With his help, they might not just survive but thrive. Yet it wasn't only practical considerations that made her hesitate. There was the undeniable attraction between them, the way her heart raced whenever he was near. Entering into a business partnership with a man, she was increasingly drawn to emotionally seemed fraught with potential complications. And yet, the alternative, struggling alone or being dependent on the charity of the townspeople, was equally unappealing. The twins began to stir, their small movements becoming more insistent until Elizabeth's hungry cry filled the cabin. As Olivia gathered her daughter into her arms and settled into the rocking chair to nurse, she found clarity beginning to emerge from her confusion. She wanted her children to grow up secure and well provided for. She wanted to honor Thomas's memory by making a success of the life they'd started together. And yes, a small voice inside her admitted, she wanted the chance to know Adam better, to explore the connection that had formed between them in the midst of crisis. By the time James had also been fed and both babies were sleeping again, Olivia had made her decision. She would accept Adam's proposal, but she would be clear about her boundaries and expectations. This would be a business arrangement first and foremost, whatever other feelings might be simmering beneath the surface. She would tell him tomorrow, she resolved. For now, there was laundry to finish and dinner to prepare, the mundane but necessary tasks of life that continued regardless of the momentous decisions being made. Outside, the winter sun was setting early, painting the snow-covered landscape in shades of gold and rose. Olivia paused at the window, her gaze drawn to the ridge beyond which Adam's cabin lay. In the gathering dusk, she could just make out a thin spiral of smoke rising from his chimney, not so far away after all, she thought. And soon, perhaps, even closer. The partnership began with the arrival of spring. Adam came daily to the Abbott cabin, working from sunrise until well past sunset to prepare the land for planting, and to mend fences and outbuildings that had fallen into disrepair after Thomas's death. Olivia found herself looking forward to these visits with an eagerness she tried to downplay, both to herself and to the ever-watchful eyes of the town ladies who continued to check in on her. Their arrangement was indeed proving mutually beneficial. Adam's knowledge of ranching and his sheer physical strength accomplished in days what would have taken Olivia weeks on her own. For her part, she kept meticulous records of their expenditures and plans, managed the household, and even began taking and mending from folks in Keeler to supplement their income until the ranch began to turn a profit. The twins, now 3 months old, were thriving under the joint care of their mother and their honorary uncle, as Adam had become. He had an uncanny ability to soothe James when he was fussy, and could always coax a smile from Elizabeth, who watched him with an intensity that belied her tender age. On a particularly fine April morning, Olivia was hanging laundry in the gentle breeze when Adam rode up, leading a second horse that pulled a small cart. Her curiosity piqued. She shaded her eyes against the sun to get a better look at his cargo. "What have you got there?" she called as he drew closer. Adam dismounted with his usual fluid grace, a grin lighting his features. "First installment of our livestock," he announced, gesturing to the cart. Olivia approached and peered inside to find a dozen chicks peeping softly in a bed of straw, along with 2 young hens and a rooster. "Adam," she exclaimed, delighted. "Where did you get them?" "Trader passing through Keeler," he explained, lifting the crate carefully. "Thought we should start small and work our way up. The chicken coop's nearly finished. They can move in this afternoon." The casual "we" and the way he'd taken the initiative without consulting her might have bothered Olivia in the early days of their partnership, but she'd come to trust Adam's judgment in these matters. Besides, she'd mentioned wanting chickens from the start. "They're perfect," she said, reaching out to stroke one of the fluffy yellow chicks with a gentle finger. "The twins will be fascinated. Speaking of," Adam said, glancing toward the cabin, "where are my favorite little ranchers this morning?" The possessive "my" sent a warm flutter through Olivia's chest. Napping, thank heavens, they were up half the night. She stifled a yawn at the memory. Adam's expression softened with concern. "You look tired, Olivia. Why don't you rest while they're sleeping?" "I can manage the chickens and finish the coop on my own." The temptation to accept his offer was strong, but Olivia shook her head. "I've been cooped up indoors too long. Some fresh air and activity will do me good." Adam studied her for a moment, then nodded. "At least let me finish hanging the laundry while you sit for a spell. You can direct me if I do it wrong." His mouth quirked in a teasing smile that Olivia found increasingly hard to resist. "Very well," she conceded, handing him the basket of damp clothes. "But don't say I didn't warn you when your shirts end up with clothespin marks in odd places." Adam's laugh, rich and warm, filled the spring air. "I'll take my chances." They worked companionably through the morning, Olivia resting when Adam insisted, but mostly helping with the chickens and the completion of the coop. By midday, the new additions to the ranch were settled in their home, and Adam and Olivia sat on the cabin's small porch, sharing a simple lunch of bread, cheese, and early spring greens. "I've been thinking," Adam said after a comfortable silence. "We should give the ranch a proper name. Make it official." Olivia considered this, watching a hawk circle lazily in the clear blue sky. "What did you have in mind?" Adam shrugged, his shoulder brushing against hers in a way that felt both casual and significant. "It's your land, Olivia, your husband's legacy. I thought you should decide." The mention of Thomas no longer brought the sharp pain it once had. Instead, Olivia felt a gentle melancholy tinged with gratitude for the brief time they'd had together and the beautiful children he'd given her. "Thomas always called this place our new hope," she said softly. "He was so certain we could build something meaningful here." Adam nodded thoughtfully. "New Hope Ranch," he tested the name. "It has a good sound to it." "Yes," Olivia agreed, warming to the idea. New Hope. It felt right, not just as a tribute to Thomas, but as a description of what she was building now, a new future, a new possibility for happiness. Adam's hand found hers on the rough wooden boards of the porch, his calloused fingers entwining with hers in a gesture that felt both protective and questioning. Olivia didn't pull away. "Olivia," he began, his voice lower than usual, "there's something I've been wanting to say." The moment was shattered by the wail of a baby from inside the cabin. Both twins, it seemed, had decided their nap was over. Adam's hand released hers, and he stood quickly. "I should get back to work," he said, a hint of regret in his tone. "Those fence posts on the north pasture won't set themselves." Olivia rose as well, smoothing her skirts to hide her disappointment. "Of course, and I need to tend to James and Elizabeth." For a moment, they stood facing each other, the air between them charged with unspoken words. Then Adam tipped his hat slightly, a gesture that had become familiar but no less charming with repetition. "I'll see you tomorrow, Olivia." "Tomorrow," she echoed, watching as he strode toward his horse, his tall figure silhouetted against the bright spring sky. As she turned to go inside to her children, Olivia wondered what he had been about to say and whether he would find the courage to say it again. More importantly, she wondered if she would find the courage to respond in kind when he did. The summer of 1879 brought long, sun-drenched days of hard work and quiet satisfaction. New Hope Ranch was beginning to take shape as a viable operation. The vegetable garden flourished under Olivia's care, providing not only for their table but enough surplus to trade in town for other necessities. The chicken flock had grown, with the first eggs appearing in late May, a cause for celebration marked by an elaborate breakfast that Adam insisted on preparing himself. In June, he brought home 4 calves, the beginning of what he hoped would eventually be a respectable herd. Olivia had questioned the wisdom of such an investment so soon, but Adam's confidence was infectious. "Cattle are the future in these parts," he'd explained as they watched the young animals explore their new pasture. "In 5 years' time, you'll have more offers to buy this land than you can count, once word gets out how good the grazing is." The way he spoke of the future confidently, as though his place in it alongside her was assured, gave Olivia a sense of security she hadn't felt since Thomas's death. Yet there remained a careful distance between them, a boundary neither seemed willing to cross, despite the deepening of their friendship and the growing evidence of their mutual attraction. Harriet Thornton, during one of her regular visits to check on the twins, had finally commented on the situation with her characteristic bluntness. "That man is in love with you, Olivia Abbott," she declared, watching from the cabin window as Adam chopped wood in the yard, his shirt discarded in the summer heat. "And unless I miss my guess, you feel the same way about him." Olivia had blushed furiously but didn't deny it. "It's complicated, Harriet," the older woman had snorted. "Only because you're making it so. You're both free, decent people. What's standing in your way?" It was a question Olivia had asked herself countless times over the months of their partnership. Was it loyalty to Thomas? Fear of moving too quickly? Concern about how the town would view such a union, given that she was still technically in mourning? Or was it, as she sometimes suspected in her most honest moments, simple fear of opening herself to the possibility of loss again, fear of disrupting the delicate balance they had achieved? Whatever the reason, the summer passed with the question unasked and unanswered, the attraction between them acknowledged only in lingering glances and brief, seemingly accidental touches that left them both yearning for more. July brought scorching heat and the twins' first teeth, making for fussy babies and sleepless nights. Adam, noticing Olivia's exhaustion, began staying later in the evenings to help with bedtime, reading stories or simply rocking a cranky James or Elizabeth until they drifted off. "You don't have to do this," Olivia told him one evening as they sat on the porch after finally getting both babies to sleep. The night was warm, the air heavy with the scent of the wildflowers that dotted the pasture. "I know," Adam replied, his profile outlined in silver by the moonlight. "I want to." The simple sincerity in his voice made Olivia's throat tighten with emotion. She had come to rely on him, not just for the practical help he provided, but for his steady presence, his quiet strength, his unwavering support. "Adam," she began, gathering her courage. "I've been thinking." A rider appeared suddenly at the edge of the property, approaching at a speed that suggested urgency. Adam was on his feet immediately, hand moving instinctively to the gun he wore at his hip. "Stay here," he instructed, moving to the edge of the porch. The rider drew closer, and in the moonlight, Olivia recognized young Billy Thornton, Harriet's son. "Mr. Fletcher, Mrs. Abbott," Billy called as he reined in his horse. Ma sent me. There's trouble in town. Johnny Wilkes and his gang are causing a ruckus at the saloon. Sheriff's asking for help from any men who can ride. Adam's posture stiffened. Wilkes is back. I thought he'd been run out of the territory. Billy shook his head. Came back with more men. They're threatening to burn the place down if they don't get what they want. What do they want? Olivia asked, fear clutching at her heart. Billy's young face was grim in the moonlight. Revenge, Ma says. Sheriff Parker was the one who drove them out last time. Adam turned to Olivia, conflict clear in his expression. I should go, he said, his voice low. Parker's a good man. He'll need all the help he can get. Olivia wanted to protest, to beg him to stay safe with her and the twins, but she knew it would be selfish. The town had been good to her, especially after Thomas's death and the twins' birth. If there was trouble, everyone had to do their part. Of course, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Be careful, Adam. He held her gaze for a long moment, then nodded. I'll get my horse. Within minutes, he and Billy were riding hard toward Keeler, leaving Olivia alone with her sleeping children and her fears. She knew about Johnny Wilkes and his gang. Everyone in the territory did. They were cattle rustlers and worse, known for their brutality and lack of mercy. Unable to sleep, Olivia kept watch through the night, jumping at every sound and praying for Adam's safe return. The twins, perhaps sensing her anxiety, slept fitfully, requiring frequent comforting. Dawn was breaking when she heard hoofbeats approaching the cabin. Peering anxiously through the window, she saw Adam riding slowly up the path, his posture slumped with exhaustion but otherwise apparently unharmed. Relief flooded through her, so intense she felt lightheaded. She rushed outside to meet him, not caring about propriety or the early hour. Adam. Are you all right? What happened? He dismounted stiffly, and in the growing light she could see a dark bruise forming on his cheekbone and blood on his knuckles. I'm fine, he assured her, catching her hands as she reached instinctively to examine his injuries. It looks worse than it is. And the town, Sheriff Parker? Adam's expression darkened. Parker took a bullet, but Doc Miller thinks he'll pull through. We managed to drive Wilkes and his men out, but not before they shot up the saloon and the general store. He paused, his grip on her hands tightening slightly. They'll be back, Olivia. Men like that don't give up easily. A cold dread settled in the pit of her stomach. Should we be worried here? The ranch is isolated. Adam shook his head firmly. Wilkes has no quarrel with us. His fight is with Parker and the town council that backed him in enforcing the law. But despite his reassuring words, there was a new tension in his shoulders, a vigilance in his gaze as it swept the surrounding landscape. Come inside, Olivia urged, suddenly aware of how exposed they were standing in the open yard. You need to rest, and I'll see to those cuts. Adam allowed her to lead him into the cabin, where he sank gratefully into a chair at the table. Olivia busied herself heating water and gathering clean cloths, and the small supply of medicines she kept on hand. As she gently cleaned the cuts on his hands, she noticed other bruises beginning to darken on his forearms and a long scratch along his neck. You were in the thick of it, she observed, trying to keep her tone light despite the fear constricting her chest. Adam's mouth quirked in a humorless smile. Couldn't let Parker and the others face them alone. The matter-of-fact courage in his statement only increased Olivia's admiration for him. This was the man she had come to know over the past month, steadfast, honorable, willing to put himself at risk for what was right. You're a good man, Adam Fletcher, she said softly, her hands pausing in their ministrations. His eyes, tired but warm, met hers. I try to be, he replied simply. Then, with a gentleness that belied his rough appearance, he reached up to tuck a stray strand of hair behind her ear. I couldn't bear it if anything happened to you or the little ones, Olivia. You know that, don't you? The intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. I know, she whispered, acutely aware of his nearness, of the warmth of his skin beneath her fingers. For a long moment, they remained frozen in that tableau, poised on the edge of something new and uncertain. Then James began to cry from the cradle, the sound breaking the spell between them. Adam withdrew his hand slowly, his expression a mixture of regret and resignation. You should see to him, he said, and I should get back to my place, clean up properly. Olivia nodded, stepping back to allow him to stand. Will you come back later? She asked, hating the vulnerability in her voice but needing the reassurance of his presence. Wild horses couldn't keep me away, Adam promised, his smile tired but genuine. He hesitated at the door, then added in a softer tone, Lock up behind me, Olivia, and if you see or hear anything unusual, fire a shot in the air. I'll come running. The warning, spoken casually as though it were a normal parting sentiment, underscored the new reality they faced. The relative peace and security they had been building at New Hope Ranch was threatened, not directly perhaps, but by the proximity of violence and lawlessness. As she closed and locked the door behind Adam, Olivia felt a renewed determination rising within her. She had already lost one husband to the unforgiving nature of frontier life. She would not lose Adam too, not to Johnny Wilkes, not to the dangers of the West, and not to her own fears and hesitations. Whatever came, they would face it together. And when the danger had passed, she resolved, they would finally have the conversation that had been brewing between them all these months. The aftermath of the confrontation in Keeler cast a shadow over the otherwise bright summer days. Adam began carrying his rifle when he worked the far pastures, and insisted that Olivia keep a loaded shotgun within easy reach at all times. He also took to sleeping in the barn some nights, claiming it was more convenient given the early hours he needed to start work. But Olivia knew he was standing guard. Despite the undercurrent of tension, life at New Hope Ranch continued its forward momentum. The garden yielded a bountiful harvest, the chickens produced eggs in abundance, and the calves grew sturdy and strong under Adam's watchful care. In August, he brought home a milk cow, a gentle Jersey he'd traded for with a farmer passing through Keeler on his way to Oregon. Her name's Maybelle, he told Olivia as he led the placid animal into the barnyard. The twins can have fresh milk now, and you can try your hand at cheese making if you've a mind to. The thoughtfulness of the gesture brought tears to Olivia's eyes. Adam, she's wonderful, but how could you afford her? Adam looked slightly embarrassed. I traded my pocket watch. It was my father's, but I never much cared for it anyway. Olivia knew he was lying. She'd seen him check that watch countless times, had noticed the care with which he wounded each morning. That he would part with such a family heirloom for the well-being of her children touched her deeply. Thank you, she said simply, reaching out to squeeze his hand. The look he gave her in return was worth more than any words could express. September brought cooler temperatures, and the twins' first tentative attempts at crawling. Adam built a sturdy playpen that could be moved from the cabin to the porch, allowing Olivia to keep the increasingly mobile babies contained while she worked. They'll be running before we know it, he observed one evening as they watched James determinedly pursuing a wooden toy across the cabin floor. We'll need to make sure the well is covered and the barnyard secure. We, Olivia thought, not for the first time. Always we, as though their lives were already permanently entwined. And weren't they, in all the ways that truly mattered? The threat from Johnny Wilkes and his gang still hung over the community, though there had been no further incidents since the confrontation in July. Sheriff Parker was recovering slowly, and a contingent of U.S. Marshals had been dispatched to the area to help maintain order. The increased law enforcement presence had seemingly driven Wilkes further into the hills, but few believed he was gone for good. "He's biding his time," Adam told Olivia after returning from one of his periodic trips into town for supplies, "waiting for the marshals to move on to their next assignment." The knowledge that danger still lurked on the horizon made their quiet evenings together all the more precious. After the twins were asleep, Adam and Olivia would often sit on the porch, talking softly about their plans for the ranch, sharing stories of their pasts, or simply enjoying the companionable silence that had grown between them. It was during one such evening in late September, with the first hints of autumn crispness in the air, that Adam finally broached the subject they had been dancing around for months. "Olivia," he began, his voice carrying a note of resolve she hadn't heard before. "There's something I need to ask you, and I've been putting it off too long already." Olivia's heart leapt into her throat. She turned to face him, acutely aware of the scant inches separating them on the porch step. "What is it, Adam?" In the fading light, his expression was solemn but tender. "I think you know how I feel about you, about James and Elizabeth too. These past months, working alongside you, watching the little ones grow, it's been the happiest time of my life." Olivia's breath caught as Adam reached for her hand, enfolding it in both of his. "I know it hasn't been a year since Thomas passed," he continued, his voice low and earnest. "And I would never want to dishonor his memory or rush you into something you're not ready for. But I can't keep pretending that what I feel for you is just friendship or business partnership." "Adam," Olivia whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "Let me finish," he said gently. "I love you, Olivia Abbott. I think I have since that first night in the blizzard when you showed such courage bringing your babies into the world. I love your strength, your kindness, your determination. I love the way you sing to the twins when you think no one's listening, and the way you always know exactly how much salt to put in the stew." A smile tugged at Olivia's lips even as tears filled her eyes. "I want to build a life with you," Adam continued, growing more confident as he spoke. "A real life, not just a business arrangement. I want to be a father to James and Elizabeth, to watch them grow up strong and happy. I want to wake up beside you every morning and go to sleep with you in my arms every night." He paused, his gaze searching hers. "I'm not asking for an answer right now. I understand if you need time or if you're not ready, but I needed you to know where I stand." The fullness in Olivia's heart threatened to overwhelm her. For so long, she had been holding back her own feelings, uncertain of his, afraid of disrupting the delicate balance they had achieved. Now, with his declaration hanging in the air between them, all her doubts and hesitations seemed insignificant. "Adam Fletcher," she said, her voice steadier than she expected, "if you think I need time to consider whether I love you, then you haven't been paying attention." His expression shifted from uncertainty to hopeful disbelief. "Does that mean—" "It means I love you too," Olivia interrupted, squeezing his hands. "I have for months now. I just didn't know if it was too soon, if I was betraying Thomas's memory. If you felt the same way—" She never finished her litany of doubts, because Adam had pulled her into his arms, his lips finding hers in a kiss that was both tender and fiercely possessive. Olivia melted into his embrace, all thought suspended as the sensation of finally being in his arms overwhelmed her. When they broke apart, both breathing heavily, Adam rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me, Olivia," he whispered. "Be my wife." Joy bubbled up within her, bright and effervescent. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes, I'll marry you, Adam." His answering smile was like the sunrise, gradual, then blindingly brilliant. He kissed her again, more gently this time, as though sealing their promise. When they finally drew apart, Twilight had deepened into true darkness, the stars emerging one by one in the vast Wyoming sky. They sat together on the porch steps, Adam's arm around Olivia's shoulders, her head resting against his chest, planning their future in quiet, contented voices. They would marry as soon as was respectable after the 1-year anniversary of Thomas's death, which would come in December. The cabin was big enough for their family for now, but Adam spoke of adding rooms as the children grew, and perhaps more children came along. The ranch would expand gradually. Adam had his eye on a neighboring property that might come up for sale in the spring. As they talked, Olivia felt a sense of rightness settle over her. This was where she belonged here on this land, with this man, building a life together. Thomas would have approved, she was certain. He had always wanted her happiness above all else. The sound of a horse approaching at a gallop shattered their peaceful planning. Adam was on his feet in an instant, pushing Olivia behind him as he reached for the rifle that was never far from his side these days. "Get inside," he ordered, his voice tense. "Lock the door." But before Olivia could obey, the rider came into view, Billy Thornton again, his horse lathered with sweat from hard riding. "Mr. Fletcher, Mrs. Abbott," he called urgently. "Johnny Wilkes and his men, they're headed this way. They've burned 3 farms already tonight." Cold fear gripped Olivia's heart. "Why?" she gasped. "Why would they come here?" Billy's young face was pale in the starlight. "They're targeting anyone who helped against them in July. Mr. Fletcher's name was on their list. I heard them talking in town before they rode out." Adam's expression hardened. "Olivia, take the twins and go to the root cellar. Stay there until I come for you." "No," she protested, clutching his arm. "I won't leave you to face them alone." Adam turned to her, his eyes fierce with determination and love. "I'm not asking, Olivia. I need to know you and the children are safe. Please." The plea in his voice broke through her resistance. With a quick nod, she hurried inside to gather the sleeping twins from their cradle. Adam turned back to Billy. "How many men with Wilkes?" "At least 6 that I saw," the boy replied. "Maybe more by now." Adam's jaw tightened. "Ride to town, Billy. Get the sheriff and anyone else who can help. Tell them Johnny Wilkes is about to make his last mistake." As Billy wheeled his horse and galloped off toward Keeler, Adam strode into the cabin. Olivia had wrapped the twins in blankets and was preparing to take them to the root cellar behind the house, a small underground space Thomas had dug for storing vegetables through the winter. "Adam," she said urgently as he checked his rifle and gathered additional ammunition. "Promise me you won't try to face them alone. Promise me you'll hide until help arrives." His expression softened as he looked at her, standing brave and resolute with a baby in each arm. "I can't promise that, Olivia. I need to defend our home, but I promise I'll be careful." The use of "our home" wasn't lost on her, even in this moment of fear. Adam crossed the room in 2 strides and kissed her fiercely, then pressed gentler kisses to the foreheads of James and Elizabeth. "Go now," he said. "Stay quiet no matter what you hear. Don't come out until you hear my voice, Olivia, not someone else's telling you it's safe." Tears burning in her eyes, Olivia nodded. "I love you," she whispered. "And I love you," Adam replied, his voice rough with emotion. "Now go." Olivia slipped out the back door of the cabin, moving as quietly as possible with the twins in her arms. The root cellar was well hidden behind a stand of bushes, its door covered with sod to blend into the hillside. She descended the rough wooden steps carefully, settling the twins on a pile of empty burlap sacks in the corner farthest from the entrance. To her relief, neither baby woke during the transfer. She pulled the cellar door closed above her, plunging the small space into complete darkness. Then she sat beside her sleeping children, one hand on each of them, and began to pray as she had never prayed before. Outside, Adam worked quickly to prepare for the coming confrontation. He moved Maybelle and the other animals into the barn, barricading the door to keep them safe. Then he took up a position on the porch, rifle at the ready, his eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of approaching riders. The wait was excruciating. Every rustle of wind through the grass, every call of a night bird made his muscles tense in anticipation. How long would it take for help to arrive from town? How much time did he have before Wilkes and his men descended on the ranch? Adam had no illusions about his chances against 6 or more armed men. His only hope was to hold them off long enough for reinforcements to arrive from Keeler. For Olivia and the twins, he would do whatever it took, even if it meant sacrificing his own life. The thought of Olivia brought a surge of fierce protectiveness. Just when he had finally found the courage to tell her how he felt, just when they were beginning to plan a future together, this threat had emerged to endanger everything. But he wouldn't let Johnny Wilkes destroy what they had built, not without one hell of a fight. The distant sound of hoofbeats reached his ears, coming fast from the direction of town. Adam tensed, raising his rifle, then relaxed slightly as he recognized the familiar figure of Sheriff Parker leading a group of mounted men at least a dozen strong. Relief flooded through him as the riders approached. Billy had come through, and faster than Adam had dared hope. "Fletcher," Parker called as they drew closer. The sheriff was still pale from his recent injury, but his voice carried the authority of his position. "We got word Wilkes is heading this way. You seen any sign of them yet?" "Nothing," Adam replied, stepping off the porch to meet the riders. "But if Billy's information is correct, they could be here any minute." Parker nodded grimly. "We'll set up a defensive perimeter. Daniels, Jenkins take positions by the barn. Williams, you and Thompson cover the north approach. The rest of you spread out around the house." As the men dismounted and took up their assigned positions, Adam felt a cautious optimism. With this many armed defenders, perhaps Wilkes would think twice about attacking. No sooner had the thought formed than the night erupted in gunfire from the direction of the road. A bullet splintered the porch railing where Adam had been standing moments before. "Take cover," Parker shouted, diving behind a water trough as more shots rang out. Adam flattened himself against the side of the cabin, heart pounding. The first volley had come from the trees along the road, a perfect spot for an ambush. Wilkes and his men must have seen the sheriff's posse arriving and decided to strike first. The next minutes were chaos as bullets flew from both sides. Adam returned fire whenever he glimpsed movement among the trees, but the darkness made accurate shooting nearly impossible. All the while, his thoughts kept returning to Olivia and the twins, hidden in the root cellar. Were they far enough from the fighting to be safe? Would a stray bullet find its way to them? The firefight seemed to go on forever, though in reality it couldn't have been more than 15 minutes. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the shooting from the trees stopped. An eerie silence fell over the ranch, broken only by the moans of a wounded man somewhere to Adam's left and the nervous whinnying of horses in the barn. "Wilkes," Parker called into the darkness, "it's over. Throw down your weapons and come out with your hands up." For a long moment, there was no response. Then a voice rang out from the trees, harsh, mocking, and unmistakably angry. "This ain't over, Parker. Not by a long shot." The sound of retreating hoofbeats followed Wilkes and his men withdrawing into the night. "Should we pursue, Sheriff?" one of the deputies asked. Parker shook his head. "Too risky in the dark. We'd be riding right into another ambush." He turned to Adam. "Where's Mrs. Abbott and the little ones?" "Safe," Adam replied tersely, already moving toward the back of the cabin. "I need to get them." He jogged around the building, heart in his throat as he approached the root cellar. "Olivia," he called softly, "It's me, Adam. It's safe to come out now." The cellar door pushed open and Olivia emerged, a twin cradled in each arm. Her face was pale in the moonlight, but her expression was one of fierce determination rather than fear. "Adam," she breathed, relief evident in her voice. "Are you hurt?" "I heard the shooting. I'm fine," he assured her, taking James from her arms to lighten her load. Wilkes and his men ran off when they realized they were outgunned. Sheriff Parker and his men arrived just in time. Olivia sagged against him, the tension draining from her body. "Thank God," she whispered. They walked back to the front of the cabin where Parker was organizing his men. One of the deputies had been hit in the shoulder, but the wound wasn't serious. The others were unharmed. "Mrs. Abbott," Parker greeted her with a tired smile. "Glad to see you and the little ones are safe." "Thanks to you and your men, Sheriff," Olivia replied warmly, "and to Billy for riding for help so quickly." "That boy's got spunk," Parker agreed. "His mother will be proud when she hears how he handled himself tonight." He turned to Adam, his expression serious. "Wilkes won't give up easily, Fletcher. He's got a personal grudge now. I'd advise you to bring Mrs. Abbott and the children into town for a few days, at least until we can track him down." Adam looked to Olivia, who nodded her agreement. "We'll pack some things and come in first thing tomorrow," he told the sheriff. "Tonight, I think we all need rest." Parker seemed satisfied with this plan. "I'll leave Jenkins and Thompson here overnight just to be safe. The rest of us will head back to town and organize a proper search party for first light." After the sheriff and most of his men had departed, Adam and Olivia returned inside with the twins, who had miraculously slept through most of the commotion. As Olivia settled them back in their cradle, Adam checked the cabin for any damage from the gunfight. Finding none inside, he returned to Olivia's side. "Are you all right?" he asked softly, noting the slight tremor in her hands as she tucked blankets around the sleeping babies. Olivia nodded, then shook her head, then nodded again. "I don't know," she admitted. "I've never been so frightened in my life, Adam, not even during the blizzard when the twins were coming." Adam pulled her gently into his arms and she went willingly, burying her face against his chest. "It's over now," he murmured into her hair. "You're safe. The children are safe." "But for how long?" Olivia asked, pulling back to look up at him. "As long as Johnny Wilkes is out there, we'll never truly be safe." The truth of her words hung heavy in the air between them. Adam wished he could promise her that the danger had passed, that they could return to the peaceful life they'd been building, but he wouldn't lie to her. "We'll go to town tomorrow," he said instead. "Stay there until Parker and his men have dealt with Wilkes. Then we'll come home and pick up where we left off." He brushed a strand of hair from her face, his touch infinitely tender. "Planning our wedding, our future." Olivia leaned into his hand, her eyes closing briefly at the contact. "Promise me something, Adam." "Anything," he replied without hesitation, her eyes opened, fixing him with an intense gaze. "Promise me you won't go after Wilkes yourself. Promise me you'll let the sheriff handle this." Adam hesitated. His instinct was to hunt down the man who had threatened his family, to eliminate the danger personally. But he recognized the fear behind Olivia's request, fear of losing him, fear of being left alone again. "I promise," he said finally. "I won't go looking for trouble. But Olivia, if trouble comes to us again, I will do whatever it takes to protect you and the children." She nodded, accepting this compromise. "That's all I can ask." They stood together in the quiet cabin, holding each other close, both acutely aware of how quickly happiness could turn to danger in this harsh, beautiful land they called home. But they were together, and for now, that was enough. Dawn broke cold and clear, the autumn sun casting long shadows across New Hope Ranch as Adam and Olivia prepared for their journey to town. The twins, fed and changed, were bundled warmly against the morning chill. Jenkins and Thompson, the deputies who had remained overnight, helped load the wagon with the necessities Olivia deemed essential for a stay of indeterminate length in Keeler. The sheriff sent word that Wilkes and his men were spotted heading toward the hills to the east, Jenkins informed Adam as they secured a trunk of clothing in the wagon bed. Posse is already on their trail. Adam nodded, relief mingling with frustration that he wouldn't be part of the hunt. He had given Olivia his word, however, and he intended to keep it. "How long do you think we'll need to stay in town?" Olivia asked as she emerged from the cabin with a last basket of supplies. "Hard to say, madam," Thompson replied. "Might be a few days, might be longer. Depends on how fast we can track Wilkes down." Olivia's expression tightened, but she made no complaint as Adam helped her into the wagon, the twins secure in a padded box at her feet. Their little faces peered up curiously, James gumming his fist while Elizabeth watched the proceedings with solemn eyes. "I'll drive ahead to scout the road," Jenkins offered, mounting his horse. "Thompson can follow behind the wagon. No chances today." Adam appreciated the precaution. He took up the reins, with his rifle resting across his lap within easy reach. As the small procession made its way down the rutted track that led to the main road, he cast a glance back at the ranch, their home, the place where they had found each other and begun to build a life together. "We'll be back soon," he promised, as much to himself as to Olivia. She reached for his hand, squeezing it briefly before returning her attention to the twins. "I know we will." The journey to Keeler passed without incident, the bright October day seeming at odds with the tension that had marked the previous night. As they approached the town, Adam noted increased activity, men on horseback coming and going. Small groups gathered in conversation outside the general store and the saloon. "Looks like the whole town's turned out for the hunt," he observed. Harriet Thornton was waiting for them outside her modest home, having been alerted by Billy of their impending arrival. She bustled forward as the wagon came to a stop, her practical hands already reaching for the twins. "Bring them inside," she instructed. "I've got the spare room all made up for you, and there's hot coffee waiting." Olivia nearly wept with gratitude for the older woman's efficiency and warmth. While Adam and the deputies unloaded their belongings, she followed Harriet into the tidy house that smelled of baking bread and herbs. "Billy told me what happened," Harriet said as she settled Olivia and the twins in the kitchen. "That boy's half terrified, half proud of himself for raising the alarm." "He saved our lives," Olivia said simply. "If he hadn't ridden for help when he did." Harriet's expression softened as she poured coffee into thick mugs. "He's a good lad, takes after his father that way." She set a mug before Olivia. "Now drink this and tell me everything." By the time Adam joined them, having seen to the horses and thanked the deputies for their escort, Olivia had recounted the events of the previous night. Harriet listened with a grim expression, her mouth set in a hard line. "Johnny Wilkes is a devil," she declared as Adam took a seat at the table. "Has been since he was a boy, pulling wings off flies. The territory will be better off when he's gone." "Gone?" Olivia asked. "You mean captured and brought to justice?" Harriet and Adam exchanged a look that Olivia couldn't quite interpret. "Justice takes different forms out here," Harriet said finally. "Sometimes it's a judge and a jury, sometimes it's a bullet." The blunt assessment silenced further discussion on the topic. Harriet turned her attention to more practical matters, showing Adam and Olivia the room they would share and helping settle the twins for a nap after their exciting morning. "I've got to check on Mrs. Wilson, baby, due any day now," she announced when these tasks were complete. "Make yourselves at home. There's stew on the stove for dinner and fresh bread in the pantry." After she had gone, Adam and Olivia found themselves alone for the first time since the attack. The small bedroom, with its narrow but comfortable-looking bed, seemed suddenly very intimate. "I can sleep on the floor," Adam offered, noting Olivia's flushed cheeks. "Or in the barn, if you'd prefer." Olivia shook her head, a smile tugging at her lips despite the seriousness of their situation. "Don't be ridiculous, Adam. We're engaged, or have you forgotten already?" The tension in his shoulders eased. "I haven't forgotten a single word of last night before the interruption." He stepped closer, reaching for her hands. "It seems like a lifetime ago now." "It does," Olivia agreed, allowing him to pull her gently into his arms. "But it wasn't." "And nothing has changed, Adam. I still want to marry you, I still love you." "And I love you," he murmured, bending to press a soft kiss to her lips. "More than I can say." They stood holding each other in the quiet room, finding comfort in the simple contact. Outside, the life of the town went on, horses and wagons passing by, voices calling greetings, the distant clang of the blacksmith's hammer. Normal sounds, reassuring in their ordinariness. "What happens now?" Olivia asked eventually, her head resting against Adam's chest. "We wait," he replied, stroking her hair. "We let Parker and his men do their job, and we plan our future." Olivia looked up at him, her expression hopeful despite the circumstances. "Tell me about it, our future. What do you see?" Adam's eyes softened as he gazed down at her. "I see New Hope Ranch growing, thriving. I see the twins running through the fields, laughing. I see us growing old together on that porch, watching the sun set over land that's truly ours." The simplicity and sincerity of his vision brought tears to Olivia's eyes. "It sounds perfect," she whispered. "It will be," Adam promised. "Once this is over." The days in Keeler passed slowly. News from the posse was sporadic. Wilkes and his men had been tracked into the hills but had so far eluded capture. The town remained on alert, with armed men patrolling the streets at night and travelers warned to move in groups for safety. Adam chafed at the enforced idleness, but he used the time to make arrangements for improvements to the ranch and to speak with the minister about their wedding plans. December seemed very far away, but there were preparations to be made and, as Harriet pointed out practically, babies didn't stop growing just because there was trouble. "They'll need proper cradles soon," she observed one evening as they watched the twins attempting to pull themselves up using the sofa. "And the cabin will need child-proofing before they are truly mobile." Adam nodded thoughtfully. "I've been thinking about adding on to the cabin another bedroom, a larger kitchen. Make it a proper family home." The casual way he included himself in these future plans warmed Olivia's heart. Despite the danger that had driven them temporarily from their home, despite the uncertainty hanging over them, Adam was focused on the life they would build together. On the 5th day of their stay in Keeler, Sheriff Parker returned with most of the posse. His expression as he dismounted in the town square told Olivia all she needed to know before he even spoke. "Wilkes got away," Adam said flatly, having joined the crowd gathering to hear the news. Parker nodded wearily. "Crossed into Montana territory. We followed as far as we could, but—" He shrugged, the gesture conveying both frustration and resignation. "Will he come back?" someone in the crowd asked. The sheriff's gaze swept over the assembled townspeople, lingering briefly on Adam and Olivia where they stood on the periphery. "Hard to say. He lost 3 men in the hills, 2 dead, 1 captured. That might be enough to convince him to stay away." "And if it isn't?" Adam pressed. Parker met his gaze directly. "Then we'll be ready for him next time." The crowd dispersed slowly, murmuring among themselves about the news. Adam and Olivia walked back to Harriet's house in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. "We can go home tomorrow," Adam said finally as they approached the small house. "If you want to." Olivia considered this. The threat from Wilkes wasn't entirely gone, but it had diminished. And the ranch, their home, was calling to her. "Yes," she decided. "I want to go home." Adam's smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. "So do I." They returned to New Hope Ranch the next morning, escorted once again by Deputies Jenkins and Thompson as a precaution. The sight of the cabin, standing solid and welcoming in the autumn sunshine, brought a lump to Olivia's throat. "Welcome home," Adam murmured as he helped her down from the wagon, the twins secure in their carry box. Home. The word had never meant more to Olivia than it did in that moment, with Adam beside her and their children, for she had come to think of the twins as belonging to both of them, gurgling happily at the familiar surroundings. The deputies helped unload their belongings and did a thorough check of the property before departing with assurances that regular patrols would include the ranch for the foreseeable future. Then, finally, Adam and Olivia were alone with the twins in their own home once more. "I missed this place," Olivia admitted as she moved around the cabin, reacquainting herself with the space that had become so dear to her. "I never thought I'd feel so attached to it." "It's more than just a place," Adam said, watching her with a tender expression. "It's everything we've built together." Olivia crossed to where he stood and placed her hands on his chest, looking up into his face with all the love she felt shining in her eyes. "And everything we will build," she added softly. Adam's arms came around her, drawing her close. "Everything," he agreed, before lowering his head to claim her lips in a kiss that held all the promise of their future together. The weeks that followed their return to the ranch were filled with work and preparation. The garden needed harvesting before the first frost. The animals required extra care as winter approached, and the cabin itself needed winterizing to withstand the coming cold. Adam threw himself into these tasks with renewed energy, often working from dawn until well after dusk. Olivia, concerned by his driving pace, finally confronted him one evening as he came in from reinforcing the barn doors. "You're working yourself to exhaustion, Adam," she said, handing him a cup of hot coffee. "The ranch won't collapse if you take a day of rest." Adam sighed, running a hand through his hair in a gesture of frustration she'd come to recognize. "I need to make sure everything's secure before winter sets in. If Wilkes decides to come back, if Wilkes comes back, we'll face him together," Olivia interrupted firmly. "But wearing yourself into the ground won't help anyone." Adam looked at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "You're right, I need to know you and the little ones are safe." Olivia stepped closer, laying a gentle hand on his cheek. "We are safe, Adam, because we're together." The tension seemed to drain from him at her touch, and he turned his face to press a kiss to her palm. "Together," he echoed. November brought the first snowfall, a gentle dusting that turned the ranch into a wonderland of white. The twins, now nearly 10 months old, were fascinated by the strange white substance that covered their world. Adam carried them outside bundled in warm clothes, allowing them to touch the snow and laughing at their surprised expressions. "Next year they'll be building snowmen," he predicted, his eyes crinkling with mirth as James tried to eat a handful of snow. "And the year after that, having snowball fights," Olivia added, her heart full at the sight of the man she loved playing with her children. As the month progressed, preparations for their wedding began in earnest. The date was set for December 15th, a year and a day after Thomas's death, a respectful interval but not so long that it suggested any reluctance on either of their parts. Harriet Thornton took charge of many of the arrangements, enlisting the women of Keeler to help with everything from the wedding cake to decorations for the small church. Olivia, touched by their enthusiasm, found herself embraced by the community in a way she hadn't been since arriving in Wyoming. "They see how happy Adam makes you," Harriet explained when Olivia expressed surprise at the outpouring of support, "and how good you are for him. That man was a ghost walking among the living before you came along." The observation gave Olivia pause. She knew Adam had been solitary before their partnership, but she hadn't fully understood the depth of his isolation until seeing him interact with the townsfolk during their wedding preparations. Where once he had been regarded with a mixture of respect and wariness, now he was welcomed warmly, included in conversations and plans, treated as a full member of the community. "You've changed him," Sheriff Parker commented one day when he stopped by the ranch to check on them. "For the better." "We've changed each other," Olivia replied, watching through the window as Adam demonstrated to the twins how to feed the chickens, his patience seemingly infinite as tiny hands scattered grain in all directions. December arrived with a proper blizzard, reminiscent of the one that had brought Adam and Olivia together a year before. They sat by the fire in the evening, the twins asleep in their new cradles, Adam's wedding gift, crafted in secret over the past month, and listened to the wind howling outside. "A year ago tonight, I was alone in my cabin, reading by the fire and wondering if spring would ever come again." Adam mused, his arm around Olivia's shoulders as they sat close together on the small sofa. "I had no idea my life was about to change forever." Olivia leaned against him, content in his warmth and solidity. "I was certain I was going to die," she admitted. "I'd never felt so alone or so afraid. And then suddenly there you were." "There you were," Adam corrected, pressing a kiss to her temple. "In the middle of a blizzard, bringing new life into the world through sheer force of will. I think I fell in love with you right then, though I didn't recognize it at the time." Olivia smiled at the memory, no longer frightening now that it was safely in the past. "When you said you're safe now, I believed you completely, even though we were still in the middle of a storm miles from shelter. I would have carried you through fire to keep that promise," Adam said quietly, his voice rough with emotion. Olivia twisted in his arms to look up at his face, shadowed in the firelight. "You've kept it, Adam. Every day since then, you've kept me safe not just from physical danger but from loneliness, from despair." Adam's eyes, warm and intense, held hers. "And you've saved me right back, Olivia Abbott. From a life half-lived, from a heart gone cold." Their kiss was tender, a reaffirmation of all they had found in each other and all they planned to build together. When they parted, Olivia rested her head against Adam's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "5 more days," she murmured, thinking of their wedding. "5 more days," Adam agreed, his arms tightening around her. "And then forever." The day of the wedding dawned clear and cold, the recent snow sparkling in the winter sunlight. Olivia woke early, a flutter of nervous excitement in her stomach. Today, she would marry Adam Fletcher, binding their lives together officially as they had already done in their hearts. Harriet arrived mid-morning with several other women from town, shooing Adam out of the cabin with instructions not to return until it was time to leave for the church. "Bad luck for the groom to see the bride before the wedding," she declared, though both Adam and Olivia considered the superstition rather silly given that they'd been living under the same roof for months. Nevertheless, Adam complied with good humor, kissing Olivia briefly before heading to the barn, where he would change into his wedding clothes, a new suit ordered from Denver especially for the occasion. The women transformed the cabin into a hive of activity, helping Olivia bathe and dress while taking turns watching the twins, who seemed to sense the excitement in the air and were more active than usual. Olivia's wedding dress was simple but elegant, a deep ivory satin with lace trim at the collar and cuffs, made by Harriet and the other women as a wedding gift. Her hair was arranged in soft curls, with sprigs of dried lavender tucked into the arrangement, something borrowed, something blue, Harriet explained as she placed them carefully. "You look beautiful, Olivia," the older woman said, stepping back to admire her handiwork. "Adam won't know what hit him." Olivia blushed, pleased by the compliment but more concerned with the deeper significance of the day. "I just want to be his wife," she said simply. "To make it official at last." Harriet's expression softened. "It's been official in all the ways that matter for months now," she observed. "But I understand the wanting of it. A marriage deserves celebrating." And celebrate they would. The entire town of Keeler had been invited to the ceremony and the reception afterwards, to be held in the town hall. It was to be the social event of the year, according to the excited chatter of the women helping Olivia prepare. When it was time to leave for the church, Adam reappeared at the cabin door, looking so handsome in his new suit that Olivia's breath caught in her throat. His eyes widened as he took in the sight of her in her wedding dress, a look of such pure adoration crossing his face that Olivia felt tears threatening. "You're beautiful," he said simply, crossing to take her hands in his. "So are you," she replied, smiling up at him. Ah. Harriet interrupted, stepping between them. "Save it for the church. We have a schedule to keep." The sleigh ride to town was like something from a fairy tale, with the winter landscape glistening around them and the twins, dressed in their finest clothes, behaving with unusual decorum as if they too understood the importance of the day. The small church was filled to capacity, with familiar faces turning to smile at Olivia as she walked down the aisle toward Adam, who waited for her at the altar with an expression of wonder and joy that made her heart swell. The ceremony itself passed in a blur of emotion for Olivia. She was aware of the minister's words, of the warm pressure of Adam's hands holding hers, of the weight of the simple gold band as he slid it onto her finger. But most of all, she was aware of Adam himself, his steady gaze, his firm voice as he spoke his vows, the slight tremble in his fingers that betrayed his own powerful emotions. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the minister declared finally. "You may kiss the bride." Adam's kiss was gentle but full of promise, appropriate for the church setting yet conveying the depth of his feelings. When they turned to face the congregation as Mr. and Mrs. Fletcher, the applause was enthusiastic and heartfelt. The reception that followed was a joyous affair, with music and dancing and more food than Olivia had seen in one place since leaving Boston. The twins were passed from one admiring townswoman to another, soaking up the attention and staying remarkably cheerful despite the disruption to their routine. "Mrs. Fletcher," Adam murmured in her ear as they shared their first dance as a married couple. "How does it sound?" Olivia smiled up at him, her heart so full of happiness she thought it might burst. "Like music," she replied, "the most beautiful music in the world." As the evening wore on and the celebration continued around them, Adam drew Olivia aside for a moment of relative privacy. "I have something to tell you," he said, his expression a mixture of excitement and nervousness. "I've been waiting for the right moment." Curiosity piqued, Olivia studied his face. "What is it, Adam?" "Johnny Wilkes is dead," he said quietly, ensuring they wouldn't be overheard. "Parker got word yesterday but didn't want to tell us until after the wedding. Didn't want to cast a shadow on our day." Olivia felt a rush of complex emotions, relief, vindication, and a small, shameful touch of satisfaction. "How?" she asked. "Shot during a robbery attempt in Montana," Adam explained. "The law finally caught up with him." The news settled over Olivia like a blanket of peace. The threat that had hung over their lives for months was truly gone. "So it's over," she said. "We're really safe now." Adam nodded, drawing her closer. "We are. New Hope Ranch is ours to build without looking over our shoulders." Olivia leaned against him, savoring the moment and all it represented, the closing of one chapter and the beginning of another, free from the specters of the past. "Mrs. Fletcher." Harriet's voice broke through their quiet moment. "It's time to cut the cake." Laughing, Adam and Olivia rejoined the celebration, accepting congratulations and well wishes from all sides. The evening concluded with a toast from Sheriff Parker, wishing the newlyweds long life, happiness, and prosperity. As they prepared to leave, bundling the now sleepy twins into the sleigh for the journey home, Olivia was struck by how perfect the day had been, not because everything had gone according to plan. There had been minor hitches aplenty, but because she was surrounded by love, by community, by the family she and Adam were creating together. "Ready, Mrs. Fletcher?" Adam asked, helping her into the sleigh with a tender hand at her waist. "Ready, Mr. Fletcher," she replied, settling beside him with a contented sigh. The sleigh glided through the winter night, carrying them home to New Hope Ranch, to the life they had fought for, the future they would build together, and the love that had found them in the most unexpected circumstances. 5 years later, December 1884, the sound of children's laughter echoed across New Hope Ranch, carried on the crisp December air. Olivia paused in her bread-making, a smile spreading across her face as she looked out the kitchen window of the expanded cabin, now a proper house with 4 bedrooms, a spacious kitchen, and a front parlor that was the envy of many in Keeler. In the yard, Adam was helping the twins, now 6 years old and bursting with energy, build an elaborate snow fort. Beside them, 3-year-old Sarah Fletcher was attempting to make a snowball with her mittened hands, her face scrunched in concentration beneath her woolen hat. And tucked securely in a sling across Adam's broad chest was the newest addition to their family, Thomas Fletcher, just 2 months old and sleeping soundly, despite the excited shrieks of his siblings. Olivia's heart swelled with love and gratitude as she watched her family at play. The past 5 years had brought challenges, harsh winters, a drought season that nearly ruined their crops, the usual trials of frontier life, but they had also brought immeasurable joy. New Hope Ranch had flourished under their joint care, growing from a modest homestead to one of the most prosperous small ranches in the county. Adam's predictions had proven accurate. Cattle ranching was indeed the future of Wyoming, and their operation, though still modest compared to some, provided a comfortable living for their growing family. The door opened with a gust of cold air as Adam entered, baby Thomas still sleeping peacefully against his chest. "The troops are requesting hot chocolate," he announced, stamping snow from his boots. "They've declared a temporary truce in the Great Snow War of 1884. Olivia laughed, turning back to the dough she was kneading. "There's water heating on the stove. Mugs and chocolate are on the shelf." Adam moved to prepare the treat, working with the easy confidence of a man accustomed to sharing household duties. As he passed behind Olivia, he paused to press a kiss to the nape of her neck, a casual gesture of affection that still sent a pleasant shiver down her spine after all these years. "Have I told you today how much I love you, Mrs. Fletcher?" he murmured against her skin. "Only twice," Olivia replied, leaning back against him briefly. "You're falling behind schedule." Adam's chuckle rumbled through her. "I love you, Olivia Fletcher," he said, his voice warm with sincerity despite the teasing exchange. "More today than yesterday, less than tomorrow." It was a phrase he had first spoken on their wedding night and had repeated daily since, a promise kept with the same steadfastness that characterized everything he did. "And I love you," Olivia replied, turning to place a gentle kiss on his lips. Always and completely. The moment was interrupted by the thunder of small feet as the older children burst into the kitchen, bringing with them swirls of snow and excited chatter. "Papa, Mama, our fort has a secret passage," James announced, his dark eyes so like his father's alight with excitement. "And a lookout tower," Elizabeth added, not to be outdone. "I can see all the way to the ridge." Sarah, trailing behind her older siblings, simply held up her arms to Olivia in a silent request to be lifted. "Let Mama finish the bread, little one," Adam said, scooping her up with his free arm. "Then we can all have hot chocolate and fresh bread with honey." The domestic scene, so ordinary and yet so precious, brought a lump to Olivia's throat. There had been a time when she had feared she would never find happiness again, when the future had seemed an endless struggle to be faced alone. Now, surrounded by the family she and Adam had built together, she could scarcely remember that fear. Later, with the children in bed and the house quiet save for the crackling of the fire, Adam and Olivia sat together on the sofa, baby Thomas sleeping in his cradle nearby. Outside, snow had begun to fall again, large flakes drifting past the window in the light of the full moon. "You realize what day it is?" Adam asked, his arm around Olivia's shoulders as she leaned against him. Olivia nodded. "6 years ago tonight, you found me in a blizzard." Adam's fingers traced lazy patterns on her shoulder. "Best night of my life, though I didn't know it at the time." Olivia smiled at the memory, now softened by the passage of time and transformed by all that had come after. "You were so calm, so reassuring." "I thought you must have delivered dozens of babies before." "I was terrified," Adam admitted with a laugh. "But you were even more terrified, so I figured one of us had to pretend to know what we were doing." "Well, you were very convincing," Olivia said, tilting her face up to his. "When you said you're safe now, I believed you completely." Adam's expression grew serious, his eyes darkening with emotion. "It was a promise, Olivia, one I intended to keep for the rest of our lives." "And you have," she said softly, reaching up to touch his face, tracing the lines that years of Wyoming sun and wind had etched around his eyes. "Every day, in 1,000 different ways." Their kiss was gentle, familiar but never routine, a reaffirmation of the bond that had begun in crisis and grown stronger through every challenge and joy they had faced together. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing New Hope Ranch in pristine white. But inside the home they had built, Adam and Olivia Fletcher held each other close, surrounded by the warmth of family and the enduring love that had found them both when they needed it most. "You're safe now," Adam had said on that desperate night 6 years ago. And in his arms, in the life they had created together, Olivia knew she always would be.